It's been a developing story today of yet another migrant tragedy, this time in the route between Ethiopia and Yemen. I think that is the southern part of the Red Sea. Um, so apparently 68 are confirmed dead and 76 missing, and the boat had about 154 on board. Um, this is not a new thing. It happens all too often. This particular incident, this particular tragedy is on a bigger scale. Um, you know, very often in the world's sort of migrant routes, because there's not just the Mediterranean, there's other routes around the world where migrants cross. You get disasters involving maybe a dozen people, or six people, or smaller numbers than that. But this sort of scale really brings it home, the human tragedy. I uh, I want to talk though about what I notice with these sort of things. Now we can talk about the complexities of the problems, human smugglers, all the rest of it. And I'm very aware that the big issue in this country right now is the protests outside hotels. I am going to try and get around to covering that. Um, my view on it is just to touch on that because I don't know when I'll be making that video. Is that I think people have legitimate concerns where you have an influx of migrants in a particular area, particularly an area that might already have some social deprivation. However, I have to say I'm not overly sympathetic to the protesters either because they are not peaceful. A lot of them are not peaceful. Some are, but if you're wearing a balaclava and trying to force your way into a hotel with, hostile intent, don't tell me you're peaceful. In fact, as a general rule, I don't think anyone who wears a mask in a public event, in a protest in this country, has peaceful intentions. Um, this is a really hot button topic, and there's been warnings that we're going to see a repeat of what happened last year. Now, I was going to save that for another video, but there is crossover with this. This particular thing happens to be people going to Yemen for a better life. Now that says a lot. Yemen's one of the worst countries in the world. It's been racked by years of civil war and famine. So for people to feel so desperate that they would go to Yemen for a better life, to me that just brings it home how serious their situation is. But this is the thing that I find troubling. Um, the dehumanization of migrants. I mean, a lot of the comments, and it isn't just on one network. I've seen this on the BBC. I've seen it on Wheel News from India. Are sick. Quite honestly, they're sick. Oh, good. The fish got meals. 68 less rapes. Oh, it means they won't have to come to the hotels here. That sort of thing honestly disgusts me. In many of these cases, yes, it is young men, but there is also women and children involved. And frankly, if it was just young men, it would still be a tragedy. I I really have a problem with the way migrants are dehumanized, and I challenge anyone who picked a hard line on this. And I'm no naive liberal. We do need controls on immigration. We do. But I have a big problem with people who have such a callous lack of empathy that they think it's cool to make jokes about human tragedy. That it's I just can't. I have a problem with that because if they were in the shoes of those people, they would be doing exactly the same thing. Ethiopia itself has had numerous problems. It's a poor country. It's had serious sectarian conflict in recent years. The war in Tigray may have killed hundreds of thousands of people. It doesn't get the sort of attention of Ukraine or Gaza, but that part of the world has some very serious problems. And here we have yet another tragedy. Um, so anyway, I'll close this by just saying, whatever your views on this issue are, I'm not going to argue with people who take a hard line on it and say we need to stop immigration, etc. I'm not going to argue too strongly with that because I do think there's legitimate concerns. But what really angers me is the callous, sick, dehumanization of fellow human beings. Um, I will never be okay with that. I'll never think that's acceptable. It's disgusting. And like I say, the people posting that, if they were in the shoes of those who were making these crossings, I guarantee they would be doing the same thing. They just happen to have been born in the West. I'm very reluctant to talk about things like white privilege and so on. I think that's a very flawed argument. But I do believe there's such a thing as Western privilege in the sense that if you're born in a developed country, the chances of you ever being in that situation are almost non existent. There is other challenges. We have plenty of social problems in this country, and we're not all wealthy. There's homelessness in the country. There is social problems. But I guarantee whatever social problems this country has are exacerbated tenfold in other parts of the world. Really, in the grand scheme of things, Britain's not a bad place to live. And so for people to dehumanize those who are struggling in that way, I really have a problem with that. And I don't think that makes me woke or a naive liberal or anything of the sort. It's just a sort of compassion. I don't want to be overly sentimental here, but yeah, I feel very sympathetic to those people. The other thing is, all these protests talk about save our children. My understanding is in the case in Epping, there was one Ethiopian migrant arrested on allegations of sexually assaulting a teenage girl. If he's guilty, he should be punished and deported. But again, it gets into this dehumanization. Okay, so because one may have done that, then that means they're all rapists? No. That sort of generalization and vilification is what leads to dehumanization. And I have a big problem with it. So, in summary, no, I'm not a naive liberal. I'm not saying let's just have an open door policy. I'm not saying let's let everyone in. I absolutely agree we need controls on this. And I also feel the hotel program is not working out. It's not a good idea. But I'm not overly sympathetic to some of the protesters. I'm not convinced that they're all peaceful. And this argument that there's no far right involvement is absolute nonsense. It's disingenuous. It's knowing that Homeland is involved. Homeland is an offshoot of Patriotic Alternative, which is a blood and soil nationalist group. I absolutely wouldn't trust those people. So I think there'll be people getting involved because they have genuine concerns, and some of them will be peaceful. But look at what happened last year. You had mobs gathered outside hotels threatening to burn it down with people inside, including, by the way, the hotel staff. That's lynch mob mentality. And I'll never be okay with that. I don't think there's any legitimacy in that. You want to protest, protest peacefully. But don't tell me you're peaceful if you're threatening to burn people alive. So yeah, I might speak more about the specific hotels issue because it is a powder keg situation and we could see potentially what happened last year again. I hope it doesn't happen that way, but it could happen. Um, for any Tommy Robinson fanboys who want to troll me, fuck you. I stand by everything I've said. I think I've taken a balanced approach. I don't think I'm completely like, oh, just let everyone in. And for naive liberals and woke people, there is legitimate concerns. We do need to get control on this. Um, that's it. But if you're coming out and making sick jokes about a tragedy in which at least 68 people have drowned, as far as I'm concerned, you're a POS. I have no respect for someone like that. And like I say, people like that must have had very sheltered lives where they've never had to struggle because if they had any sort of human struggle, they might have a bit more empathy.